Okay, so what we're going to do today is we're going to work on another spread, but we're going to focus more on objects and type layout. We're going to look again at frames to get you used to the idea of picture frames and text frames and how they can be used and manipulated. We're going to take this in a much more modern stance though, trying to create something that is a little bit more upscale compared to what we've done before. If you've got the crash course document with the Vibe front cover, you can continue working on that. Just have a spread underneath that and be working on that. If you were in class and you've got the resume in a single document with 2 blank pages, you can work on that. Or I'll show you how to create a new spread and we'll just go from there. The goal of this assignment really is attention to detail in the small things. So let's look at what we're looking to do here. In this assignment here, you will see two images.
Okay, so
Pause. You will see two images that you can download in order to create this look. This is what we're looking for. As you can see, this is much cleaner and much more precise. The key here is the columns down towards the bottom. We're going to have a much wider column span. We're going to have about 5 columns per page, which is pretty high. And we're going to be creating just some simple basic graphics so that you can see what you can do. So download these two images up here if you will, and then follow me in the InDesign. This is what the overall look is supposed to be. As you can see, I've got my columns down at the bottom. I want you to notice these little points here at the edges and the numbers as well. Now, before we really get started, I want to talk about links for a moment. As you can see looking at this, I have these awkward little red stop signs at the top of my images. You're working at home, at school, bouncing computer to computer, you're going to have this a lot in InDesign. In InDesign, when you place a picture, you're not actually putting that picture on the document. We saw this a little bit in Illustrator, but not to this extent. So this image isn't actually here. It looks like it is, but it's not. So if you go up to Window and then Links, okay, so all you really have to do is double click right here. So this is Adobe 1.9. I'll double click on that and I'll find that Adobe 1.9 image. You may have to go back to Canvas and re-download these if you move computer to computer, and then hit Open. And when it finds one, it generally finds the second one because it'll be in a similar location. Just hit OK. And there go your stop signs and you're relinked. So that makes things a lot easier for what we're trying to do here. And you want to make sure those links are linked to an image. Now we can always come in here and right click on this or control click and embed link. The issue with this is it's going to make your documents much larger. So if you embed a link, that means when you move computer to computer, the image will stay there with you. So that's a better option a lot of the times, but it does make for a larger file. Okay, so let's skip all that. Let's get into actually building this. So if you've already got the document, just open it and skip ahead a little bit. If you don't have the document, hit File, New, Document. Now, we're going to name this. It depends on where you're at with this right now. I've created 3 of these, so I'm going to call this Adobe or dtrip-cc4. If you've only got 2, then make it 3. I'm going to change my units to inches. I'm going to make sure I'm at 8.5 by 11 inches tall. That's a portrait mode orientation. I only need 2 pages really, but with the facing pages option, the first page is going to be by itself. So I'm going to actually put 3 pages here and I'm just going to ignore the first page basically. Bulkily, I'm going to use a 2-column setup. We're going to kind of deviate from this, but for right now, let's just leave it at 2 columns. And our margins are at 0.5 inches. If you've got that right there, hit Create. So like I said, I'm going to ignore this first page and just scroll down to this page. This spread, excuse me. So anytime you have 2 pages side by side, that is a spread. It can have 3, 4, 5 pages side by side. That's still considered a spread. Now, we're going to create this using some basic shapes. As you can see, there's not a lot of real challenging things here, but we do want to make sure things look right. So let's start with just this black outline. We'll come in and add these two images afterwards, and then we'll play around with our text last. So the black outline is just a shape. So it's a rectangle tool. M is the shortcut. And I'm actually going to look at my margin line here, and I'm going to go up and to the left a good ways to create this frame. I want it to go all the way across, and I want to kind of keep an even amount of spacing outside of my margin for this. The stroke comes in black. I'm just going to bump the stroke size up to 5 points, and that's going to create the basic look that I want. If you're unsure, you can always click off of everything and hit W and just kind of eyeball it to make sure it looks right. I think that looks pretty good. It's about halfway between the margin and the actual page outline. Now next I'm going to start making some frames, and we can see this image actually bleeds off the edge, whereas the other one does not. So I'm going to come over here to the edge of this piece of paper, click, hold, and drag out an image. Now it goes past my page fold and into the next column a little ways. So you can kind of see the eyeball here, kind of eyeball it and make it look pretty close. So about halfway into this column over here, so it goes pretty far. You can hit File, Place, or right here you can see the shortcut is Control or Command D. And you're going to need to find that image. I believe it's my 19. We'll give it a shot. Hey, that's it. So that's my image right here. Notice again it comes in way too large for what it's supposed to be. This image is much bigger than the frame itself. So what you're going to do is either click on this circle that shows up in the middle here, and that highlights this orange frame, or you can hit A, get your white arrow, click on this box, and that'll give it your orange frame as well. Either way, when you grab one of these bounding boxes, make sure you're holding Shift, because you want this to be in proportion with the rest of your document. So again, holding Shift as I move all of this around. I need to size it a little bit more. And we want to make sure that it's fitting in the frame. Okay. Remember, we can always come back with our black arrow, click on this, and make this more visible if we want. But we want the image inside the frame to fit well. I'm going to do the same thing down here, but I'm only going to fill this right column. And I'm going to go to that margin line, and I'm going to stop there. File, Place, or Control Command D, and I'm going to find my other image. Now this one comes in very large. So instead of sitting here and trying to find that orange frame and set that up, I'm going to give you probably the longest shortcut you're ever going to see in this class. I want you to hold Shift, Control or Command, Option or Alt. So if you're on a PC, Shift, Control, Alt. If you're on a Mac, Shift, Command, Option, and then tap the letter E. That fits to frame. That generally puts it where you can see the image really well, and in this case it fit beautifully. You may have to do some minor adjustments, just a little bit to make it fit right, but if not, you're good to roll. Alright, so that gives me my outside border and my imagery over here. We can double check over here, compare it, and I'll see the image actually goes a little lower than that black box. So I'll do that. I'll just drag that down a little bit, hit A, make my image a little bit bigger to match the frame. There's my look. Now the black border is going underneath these images, and I don't want that. So I'm going to click on that black border, Object, Arrange, Bring to Front, and that'll put it on top. So that's the look that I've got, that black border going through my imagery. Okay. So from here, we've got a small little pointer element that we need to create, and that'll be the last of our graphics. This actually isn't a graphic though. This is a piece of text, and I'm going to show you where to find that. So first I want you to get your type tool, and I want you to be careful here because a lot of places have been used here. If you look at my cursor here, there's a circle around it. If I click, it's going to turn this neutral black box, which is a frame right now, it's just a neutral frame, it's going to turn it into a text box. I don't want that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of click off on the side, or even better, I'll click on that black frame and go to Object, Lock, Command or Control L works on a PC. I think it's Command 2 on a Mac to lock it. So that way I can't mess that up. So right here I'm going to draw a small text frame with my type tool. I'm going to leave it blinking. I'm not going to type anything in here. I'm going to go look for my glyphs, which are under Window. I believe it is Type and Tables, Glyphs. You should already have this, but if not, that's where it is. I don't remember what font we were using. I want to say it was Georgia. Yeah. So the font here is called Georgia. So I'm going to go up to the top and I'm going to type JEO, and it should come up. If you don't have Georgia on your computer, most computers have it stocked, but if you don't, you can use Minion Pro for this example. So I'm going to choose Georgia Bold. And under glyphs, I'm going to see all these weird characters that you don't typically see in the English language. All these little dashes and symbols and letters that you don't typically see. This is where you'll go to find your copyright symbol, or if you're looking for like the English pound symbol or the cent symbol, this is where you would go to find those. Most fonts have them. It's just finding them can be a bit of a problem sometimes. Alright, so in here, I'm going to scroll. I must have gone past it. There should be a little arrow symbol in here somewhere. Where did you go? Alright, for lack of a better option right here, I'm just going to use these two arrows. I guarantee there's an arrow in here somewhere. Just find the arrow that you want to use. Oh, is that it? That's it. Okay, so I'm going to double click on that. It's going to come in very small, and I don't need my glyphs anymore, so I'll exit out of it. It's going to come in very small, so I'm just going to blow the size of this piece of font up to be very large. Okay? That gives me my base arrow. There's a few places this is going to be located, and I'm going to go ahead and place it where it needs to be. One's going to be just above this picture. Another, I'm going to hold Option or Alt to duplicate this, is going to be over here to the side. And we can kind of compare it to the final. It's right here on the edge. Some of these may need to be a little smaller, so you can shrink these down as needed. I'm going to drop this to about 50 or so. I think that looks pretty good. And I'll double click on the frame with my black arrow in order to shrink that frame down. If I need to make fine movements, I'll use the arrows on my keyboard to kind of bump it up and around. And that places that. Alright, I'll move this picture up a little bit. Because down at the bottom, we're going to have page numbers. And it's going to have this little arrow pointing to where that page is. So again, I'm just using my black arrow to manipulate this. And this shouldn't be anything new to you. You've manipulated frames like this the whole time. You did it in Photoshop and Illustrator. You just didn't necessarily know you were doing it. So again, I've added my arrow right here. And then I'm going to copy and paste that. Control or Command C and then V for Victor. Rotate it again. And I'm going to put this at the edge here. Alright, so that gives me my basic elements. Those are my graphic elements. Again, if you hit W, Control 0, you can kind of see what we've created here. And show this side as well. So this is our basic setup. Now it's just time for the text. So let's start at the top and kind of work our way down. So we'll start with this big quotation mark. So I'm going to click, hold, and drag a text frame, and I'm going to type quotation marks here. They're small, so I'm going to push them way up. 72 is not even close to what I'm looking for, so let's go to like 150. That's not close. Let's go to 250. That's looking closer. 300. I'm going to call that good. Now they're currently black. I don't want this black in color, so I'm going to go up to my text, my control panel, or over here in your properties panel you can do the same thing. I'm going to make sure my font is Georgia Bold, and then the fill color needs to be black, but I want a tint of black. So right here where it says tint, I'm going to type 30. maybe even 20 looking at that now that I see it. So I'm going to go to 20% tint, and that'll fade that quotation mark down. I'll grab my black arrow, and I kind of always do this. I create a big text frame, fit my text where I need it, and then I just double click on this bottom right corner of the frame and it shrinks it up so it's not all the way in my way. There are times it'll still leave like gaps like this. That's still technically part of the font. So if you end up with a small frame, you'll get this red plus symbol saying that the text is overset, meaning it just can't show up in that frame. The frame's not big enough for that text. Alright, so that sets that up nicely. I'm going to make another text frame right here. I'm going to change my font again to Georgia, bold. And I'm going to pump up the size. I'm not sure what it is, but we'll go to like 35 and then we'll try it out. Up at the top, I'm going to hit type, fill with placeholder text. Now you can see that adds some text here. Now I can manipulate this frame and kind of move it where I want. I don't want it to go past the margin line, so I'll fix that on the right. And I'll kind of compare it. It looks a little large compared to what I have here, but honestly this one looks a little small, so we'll hit it in the middle. I'm going to select all that again, type, fill with placeholder text again, just to add some extra to it. I'll add a couple question marks so it kind of looks like a headline. I think that works. About 3 lines tall, that's at 35 points. Okay, we'll move that up just a little bit. Move this up just a little bit too. Alright, so underneath that I'm going to create another text frame. This is going to go between these pink margin lines, so it's actually going to fit nicely in this column. I'm going to go to type, fill with placeholder text. Now I filled it with placeholder text first, and now I'm going to manipulate it, knowing I'm going to change the size to larger. So again, Georgia regular is the font I'm going to choose here. And I'm going to push this font up a good ways so that it only has 2 lines of text. Now again, when I do that, in fact now that I look at it, I'm going to go to Georgia bold again, bold italic. When I do that, it creates this little red plus symbol again. Now that's because again there's text that is going past this section. If that is happening, what you can do is kind of make the frame bigger for a moment. Knowing you only need 2 lines, delete everything else that's not in those 2 lines. Or you can just kind of deal with that red plus symbol. That's not good practice. You really shouldn't have those red plus symbols on finalized work. But as far as this lesson is concerned, I'm not worried about it. So that gives me my headline and my subheader, my caption for this image. Next we want to create a headline over here. So it says over the precipice right here. And now I want you to notice that it's white and black, but it's all in the same text frame. The sizes are different, but that doesn't mean we can't work with them together. So I'm going to create a text frame right here going to this margin line. And it's going to be small here for a minute, so I'm going to go ahead and make it bigger before we do that. I'm going to change the font to Georgia bold again. And I'm going to change the font to about 50 points. And then I'll type over, B, I'll hold shift and hit return, a soft return. And then I'll type in the word precipice. I have no idea how to spell the word precipice. Let's double check that. Hey, that's crazy. Alright, so I want to highlight the word precipice alone. Precipice is going to be a larger size than the other one, so this top over the is a 50-point font. Precipice is going to be 70 points, so it's going to be much larger. I'm going to highlight both, and I'm going to look at my character panel here. Okay, now you can see it up in the top as well in your control panel or in your properties. And I'm going to look for the font area in the character. I'm going to go to the all caps. It'll be 2 capital T's. You'll see it up here as well. That'll give me all caps. Next, I want to change the leading. Now the leading is currently set to auto. The leading is the space right here underneath your font size or to the right of your font size in the character panel. The leading is the space between these two words. So like you think double spacing from your teachers, triple spacing, whatever, single space, that's leading is what they're saying. They're not using the right term, but that's leading. So what we're going to do is we're going to change this leading. I'm going to make it so that these letters are almost touching each other. I want it very close. So I've got a 40, I'm just going to let them touch. I'm going to go to a 48 point lead. And now I'll place this where it needs to be. I'll shrink up this frame because I don't need all that frame. And I'll move it down. Over the needs to be highlighted, and up at the top, change to the color white. So that's what I've got. That's the nice little headline that I've got. I like it. Okay, so once I have Over the Precipice done, I'm going to grab my text tool, and I'm going to start right here on this margin line and drag a text frame that goes margin line to margin line here. I'm going to change the font to Georgia regular. I'm going to go 10 point font over 15 point leading, so that gives it a little bit extra space, kind of space and a half. And I'm going to go to type, fill with placeholder text. Now you can see this makes a lot of text and it goes all the way across. This creates a lot of strain on your eye to have you read this far across on a whole sheet of paper, and it makes it kind of difficult for you to remember, especially when you get in the middle of these big paragraphs, where your next line starts. So we columnize things to make things a little easier to read by chunking sections together. It makes it easier on the reader. If you look at a piece of paper like this, you're less likely to read it than if you had columns on a piece of paper this size. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this with my black arrow. I'm going to go up to Object, and I'm going to move down a little bit here, looking for text frame options. Control B, I assume Command B on a Mac is probably the shortcut. And right here I can change the number of my columns. I'm going to leave the gutter and the width, everything else the same, but I'm going to push my number up to 5 and hit OK. You can hit preview if you want to see it actually doing it at that time. That's pretty cool. And hit OK. So this creates a 5-columned piece of paper here. You'll see this red plus symbol because you're adding these gutters into this. You're not going to fit as much text into it. That red plus symbol shows that we have text that's being overset, and we're about to make that a lot worse actually. So if we look at the original layout, we can see the first column's actually blank. So we want to create that. I'm just going to place my cursor right here at the beginning, and I'm just going to hit enter a few times until that shows up on my second column. I'll get my black arrow, click on this box, and I want to look for that red plus symbol. When I click on that red plus symbol, my mouse is going to look kind of odd. We've seen this before in Illustrator, so don't freak out. I'm going to create a text frame that goes all the way across margin to margin here. Now this is going to put that text over that image, but that's okay. Because when we go back up here to Object, Text Frame Options, and we give this one 5 options as well, or 5 frames, we'll see that it doesn't fit all the way across. Okay, I'm going to add a little bit extra text here. I'm just going to copy some of this junk and paste it over here. Nobody will ever know the difference. And that'll fill up that second column. Now the third, fourth, fifth, I don't want to mess with it all. Now I want to make sure to leave it here. I know it looks a little funny with everything laying on top of itself, but it's really not that bad. The last thing we want to do is create a very small piece of text. So I'm going to get my zoom tool, and I'm going to zoom way in here. Whoa, that might have been a bit much. Stop. So I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to get my type tool, and right here I'm going to type the number 22. I'm going to make sure the font is still Georgia, bold for this one too. This references the page that we're on as 22, and then we can go back to go back by flipping the page that direction. Alright, so I'm going to zoom out and move to the right. I copied that number. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to paste that number. and I'm going to call that 23. Simple enough. Kind of visually line it up. Once you have that, this is your basic layout for this design. Hit W on your screen, click off everything, hit W, and then take your screenshot of your finalized work, turn it into today's assignment. Now, there are a lot of things you can do with Adobe InDesign. This is a layout program. You can lay out things in 100 different ways. This was a very minimalistic layout. A couple of small pictures, basic text on a white background. Don't be scared of color. Don't feel like you have to overdo everything in InDesign. Sometimes less is more, especially when it comes to InDesign. These designs need to look clean. I know in Photoshop and Illustrator, I've been pushing you to do more. Time to rein that back in and make it look good. Alright, so that's your lesson for today. Turn your screenshot in, and I'll see you in the next one.